All right, great. Thanks for everyone joining today. Cal, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, Cathryn. It's really good to be chatting with everybody today. I think we're going to do something slightly different to start off with, which is go into a bit of a macro update before we kind of engage with some more of our theses in climate tech after that. But essentially, we wanted to talk about a few key subjects that we think are nuanced and important to note at the same time. And so the first thing we wanted to bring to the discussion, and of course everybody's aware of it and engage with, is the sharp interest rate rise that is possibly on the horizon now. We were in something of a recovery in terms of the markets over the past few weeks. You know, by Friday, from mid-June, we'd seen about a 17% rise in the S&P 500, with it largely being supported with inflation coming in under expectations, which was a positive. However, we've seen central bankers like James Bullard in the last few weeks kind of stem that recent positivity, but by even not concluding that inflation has been overcome with at this point in time, dampening any kind of hopes that interest rates wouldn't be increased too much further. Bullard has in fact said that he'd be leaning towards a 75 bip rise kind of in the next meeting at the Fed. And so with all that said, we've seen a bit of a correction in the past few weeks. On the right hand side, you can see the graph there, that you can see that the Nasdaq in particular has fallen around about 4.5% in the last few days, mainly owing to discount rates being pushed up as interest rate rises as well. It's important, of course, from our perspective as technology investors, to be engaged with interest rates because they disproportionately affect technology stocks. And we're also needing to be aware of the kind of the wider macro environment as a whole at the moment, where we're seeing kind of sectors that were particularly supportive of the US economy, like housing, and start to falter a little bit, with housing, for example, seeing homes falling around about 6% year on year in June, according to the National Association of Realtors. And then this being kind of the slowest sales market in terms of number of sales since November 2015 as well. And then Target, we've also seen some kind of retail data as well in the past few weeks, with Target saying that consumers are becoming slightly more price sensitive as well. All of this needs to be kind of borne in mind. But what's interesting from our perspective is how this doesn't necessarily line up quite right, or it doesn't mirror the Asian situation. In fact, China are reversing that trend, lowering the cost of borrowing in order to kickstart growth. We saw the 5-year loan prime rate go up to 4.2%, and probably most crucially for our purposes, the 1-year prime rate, used as a reference for corporate loans, was pushed down to 3.65% as well, in a bid to push up the Chinese economy, which has been a little bit dragged down by kind of, again, the housing market beginning to slow there. What's interesting though is that interest rates being pulled down is of course good. It's a good thing for technology, a good thing for technology companies, and we think it's our thesis that particular countries that have limited inflation, like China, South Korea, and others, in comparison to the West, might be attractive places to look, and reasons why you might want to pursue global technology opportunities in the coming months, and why they might be more attractive than local opportunities. And just kind of following on with that, we've seen of course, the IPO market slow down in the past 6 months or so, of course, mainly relating to the fact that as public market valuations have fallen, we've seen companies being less inclined to list themselves publicly. We don't expect, of course, that to be a long-term phenomenon, but there is a broad expectation that growth at any price is probably over, with a preference for stable, profitable, free cash flowing, well-known companies at this point in time. In terms of the African venture market, we think there's reason for positivity here. In particular, VC investment has reached 1.8 billion, with that being 150% increase compared with the same period in 2021, according to data from the Big Deal. We've seen big deals like Flutterwave seeing a triple valuation following a $250 million Series D funding as well, again suggesting that global opportunities are there for the taking. And then just moving on to the one final point, which is relevant for our purposes in terms of carried interest, we saw the removal of a provision that would have targeted carried interest, placing it under the bucket of taxable income rather than suggesting it's capital gains at a lower tax rate. Again, we think that's a positive sign for the industry, with many arguing that such a provision would have stemmed investment by companies, lowering the willingness to take risk.
Great. Thank you, Cal. That was really helpful. Next, we're going to move on to talk about our next topic of this week. We're going to focus on climate tech. So as many of you know, Congress and also many nation states are now devising their own climate impact plans, and we see a huge climate bill to be passed. So this session, and also include the next two sessions, we will introduce a multi-series climate tech focused webinar. So to get us started, Cal, would you like to give us a little bit background information about the first topic?
Yeah. We think it's really interesting, not just from a climate perspective, but also for very important social reasons as well. We're all aware that construction is the largest source of emissions in the global economy, but we also think that in addition to helping address climate issues within construction, modular house building will help with the housing affordability crisis as well, as we'll outline later on. So the company we're going to focus on today is Prefab, which is a modular construction company situated in Southern California. It was founded in 2015 and has since gone on to raise about $10 million in two respective financings with investors, including Amazon. You can see there it's got a wide offering from Arizona to Colorado, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, Washington, Wyoming, and of course its largest market, California. And then just to touch on the team, firstly, we're excited by the team because we think that the team kind of balances both kind of entrepreneurial innovation and vision with deep operational expertise as well. Steve is the CEO and founder. Steve's got a really exciting background that I think many of us would envy. He's worked on initiatives with the Bill Clinton AIDS initiative in Africa, managing around about $220 million there. But in terms of his actual career, he was a co-director of a virtual reality studio at Walt Disney, and was the founding partner of Ideal, a business incubation firm that raised about $1 billion and founded or invested in a number of successful companies. And you can see, again, his education highlights the strength of his background with having studied urban planning at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. Deep is probably the more operational focused of the two, responsible for the company's business strategy, sales, marketing, client relations, and other things. He started his career at McKinsey, but also served as executive vice president of Gary Technologies, which was acquired by Trimble recently. The company was a leader in building in information modeling, software, and services for architects, engineers, and construction companies. All of those parts are crucial in the modular construction process. Okay, so what do Prefab do? What's their business model? We're all aware of what modular construction is, but to recap, it's simply the construction of houses within a factory setting. What Prefab do that's slightly different is they allow customizable designs, allowing outside architects to come in and shape the end project. In addition to that, they've also got, as you can see there, a very much a massive focus on design and quality of finish and fitting as well. In terms of their core units and their core stock, you can see that they do housing units starting from 1 bedrooms going right up until kind of much larger units with 4 rooms. Again, with different focuses and different designers having worked on those. And just to recap on funding as well, they've raised $9.7 million, which has largely gone towards building the factories in Southern California. Potentially an interesting area of exit opportunity is the fact that Amazon have held an investment in them since 2018. Amazon, of course, have strategic interests for Alexia in wanting to be part of house builders' designs and finishes as well. Okay, so what is the modular construction industry and why is it interesting? So construction takes place off-site under controlled conditions using the same materials and using the same design methods and standards as conventionally built facilities, but it does so in about half the time. When construction starts in the factory, so too can the foundational site work begin as well. In addition as well, these buildings are built with far less wastage and use far less labor as well. In terms of where we stand right now, the market's around about $140 billion in 2021, with expectations, according to Street Research, of the industry going to around about $250 billion in 2030, growing at around about 7% a year. That strong growth is going to be mostly seen, we believe, in residential construction, as increasing costs faced by home builders and further demand for housing not currently being delivered through traditional construction will force greater adoption of modern construction methods. So the outlook, where do we stand right now? In terms of where we stand right now, the current housing market's in deep disarray and deeply problematic. We've seen years of undersupply since the global financial crisis, as house builders were forced to exit due to overgearing in 2000 and in the 2000s. And then we've seen since then mortgages being harder to come by and credit being less available for housing developers as well. All of this has contributed to a US housing affordability index nearing lows not seen since 1990. And again, this trend will not be easy to address, with factors such as a shortage of construction labor, increasing raw material costs, and high land values, all meaning that sustained levels of supply will be for the long term. And putting a number on this problem, economists estimate that housing supply shortage falls between around about 1.5 million to 5.5 million units every year. You can see on the graph there that we're at lows not seen since the data began. And again, we're also seeing short-term headwinds as well, with 364,000 job openings in the construction sector at the end of February alone. In the UK and the US, around about 50% of those who were retiring from the industry are then being filled by newcomers. And once more, inflation's playing its role here, with copper, lumber, and steel, core materials used in construction, have all seen huge price increases. This once more has the effect of reducing the margin for house construction and therefore the willingness to supply as a consequence. Okay, so why does modular construction act as a solution to this? Well, it's faster, first of all. There's a potential for saving up to 30 to 60% of the overall schedule through a modular approach. There's also less labor cost, less reliance on those workers who we mentioned earlier were leaving the industry, and lower volume of waste as well. The UK group, RAP, estimates that this can equate up to a 90% reduction in material use as compared to traditional builds. McKinsey also did a really interesting study, as we're showing here, with possible savings seen on the right-hand side of the construction process. Materials and on-site labor were the biggest sources of cost reduction, but then you can also see redesign and financing also being cheaper as a consequence as well. And so plant prefab, where does it fit within this market? So as we mentioned earlier, plant prefabs has a focus on building custom designs at a really high quality. You can see on the right the unit there designed by Yves Behar. And essentially the pitch is very simple. Buy a quality designed house with an amazing architect behind it at a lower price than other new builds. And so you can see here, when you compare the units that Plant Prefab produces with comparable units at a similar pricing point, you can see that there's a product superiority here. The 6 Series 3-bed that can be built and developed, and including the land purchase, for around about $850,000, compares very favorably in terms of the spec and finish with a similar unit available on the market right now in Phoenix. You can see that the quality of design is not nearly there. The finishings and the furnishings and the finishes is poor in comparison. In addition to that, we also see plant prefab being superior in terms of price compared to new build units as well. If you look at the cost to develop and also buy the land of the 6 Series 3-bed, comes at around about $1.8 million in San Francisco versus about $2 million for a comparable new build unit on the right hand side, as you can see. In terms of where we think this might be, where we think a company like this might be valued, the public markets give some guidance. You can see 4 companies all engaged in modular building available on the market on the featured here, with EV to revenue multiples around about 2 times, with an EV to EBITDA of around about 11 times. Lots of stability in that valuation range. Where we think that the industry potentially sees some risk is that growth, of course, must continue in order to unlock further economies of scale in the construction phase. If this growth, of course, slows, then units become more expensive compared to their peers. And then also, of course, whilst less affected than their competitors by inflation, with a lower cost base, the business model is also heavily reliant on raw materials, of course, with transportation featuring heavily there, with needing to move parts between the factory and the eventual site. And so we're particularly interested in companies like Plant Prefab, and we're working on deals at the moment, and I'd be happy to in the space, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Cal. That was really great. As you guys can see, we're very excited about ways that we can engage in the climate tech movement, and Prefab is one of the companies we're really excited about. Next, Mike, would you like to cover the next area of discussion?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being with us today. My name is Mike Bai. I'm head of investments here at MarketX. And as Cathryn mentioned, we've been really interested in doing various deep dives into the climate vertical. And as you probably know, climate has a lot of different sub-verticals and very interesting developments. And Cal has done a great job to look at modular construction. We think that it's a global trend, and the dynamics of the macro and micro markets really make sense for it. And then for my discussion, what I wanted to do was give you a quick overview of some of the initial thinking we're looking through for the electric vehicle charging market, that we think there are interesting innovations coming up, even though we haven't found necessarily a high conviction deal. We think there's a lot of interesting players, and we're doing the due diligence as we speak. So the EV market is at the core of what we're looking at. There are different estimates to where the EV market will go by 2030. This specific chart estimates about 50 million electric vehicles in operation in the US. Some are estimating about 30 to 35 million vehicles. But what we do know is that there's a lot of momentum behind the future adoption of electric vehicles. One of the core reasons is policy tailwinds related to various new legislation being passed. The recent IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, has two specific aspects that are very interesting. Number one is an electric vehicle tax credit. So federal tax credit have existed for the EV industry. However, those are limited and lost funding in the past few years. However, the new tax credit will be able to provide $7,500 for consumers who want to purchase a new electric vehicle. There are some limitations to that, but we think it will be a boon to the overall industry. Next, the same IRA bill also allows for the electrification of federal fleets, especially the post office. So the post office has about 200,000 vehicles on the road every single day. And that kind of funding will be able to electrify the whole electric fleet for that federal fleet. And then if you look a few months back, the infrastructure bill was passed, and that specific bill also had a very interesting addition in terms of a $5 billion allocation for a US public EV charging network, where President Biden was estimating that the goal was to hit 500,000 public chargers. So with these tailwinds, you need to have a very strong infrastructure to be able to charge these type of products. So we're going to go over a few of the different charging solutions that exist, as well as just a segmentation of the general market. So if you understand electric vehicles, the typical battery are about 60 kilowatt hours. 60, remember that number. So there's different ways of charging that. At home, level 1 charging is the most basic, the cheapest solution. You plug your charger into a 120 volt AC outlet, where the average power output is about 2 kilowatts. So within an hour, the battery can charge about 2 kilowatts. So for a 60 kilowatt battery, that means that it takes about 30 or more hours to fully charge it. So even though it is a very cheap way, as well as convenient way, it is the slowest type of charging. So that's level 1 type of charging. For level 2, these are a little bit different than the first one. So the level 2, you have to be able to operate at about 240 volts, which is the standard in Europe, but in the US, it's 120 volts. And then the output of the charge is about 10 kilowatts of AC power. So for a 60 kilowatt battery, 10 kilowatts takes about 8 hours to charge because it doesn't go directly straight. After a certain percentage, it actually tapers off. So level 2 chargers are the most convenient and most prevalent type of charger in the US, both in home and in public. However, for the homes especially, you need to have certain upgrades to your house electrical grid. I know this because at my mother's house, she was looking to get a new car, and we were analyzing different opportunities of having a level 2 charger at our home. So the issue was that the electrical grid for our house has certain limitations related to the power that it can actually hold and manage. So there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be done with respect to the home, which enables a few different interesting companies to exist and innovations that are happening. So Connector is a very interesting company. They've raised about $18 million so far. What they're doing is saying, well, you have a very challenging electrical system at your house, and instead of upgrading it for a lot of money, we can upgrade your electrical box very simply and then be able to feed level 2 charging at home. So it's a relatively cheaper solution and universal solution for cars that, electric vehicles that you want to charge at home. Span takes that to a different level. They are invested by a lot of the great investors in hardware, in also by Amazon, Lexafund, et cetera. But what they're doing is say, well, let's take that to a step further. Yes, we have to charge our EV battery, but if we innovate and then install a new charging panel, we can actually not only enable to charge electric vehicles at home, but we actually can monitor every single outlet in your house and then make a lot of efficiencies with respect to how you want to use electric power, as well as potentially selling your power into the grid. And Sense Solar does something similar where they're an add-on to the traditional panel, and you can have real-time monitoring of the panel's production, as well as machine learning to understand which devices are using the most electricity. So starting from the need to retrofit your wiring at home, there's a lot of different business models related to the home, electric vehicle charging, as well as monitoring efficiency of electricity use at home, as well as selling to the grid, whether it's from battery to vehicle or house to vehicle. Of course, solar and battery technologies are connected with that as well. And then, of course, back to what Cal was mentioning earlier, we have different ways of new constructions. So all of the different, industries all merge together at one point or another. So the third type of charging is actually level 3 charging. So level 3 uses what's called DCFCs, direct current fast chargers. They're typically available about 200 kilowatts to 400 kilowatts as a maximum output. So if you remember, a 60 kilowatt battery can charge with 350 kilowatts in about 20 to 30 minutes, at least 80% of the battery. However, these solutions are very, very high cost because kind of like level 2 charging, you have limitations in terms of what your electrical grid can do at home. DCFCs have a large challenge for the electrical grid for the utility. So one of the best examples is that if you have 2 Teslas charging with fast chargers next to a Walmart, a big Walmart store, the 2 cars are using more power than an entire Walmart store. So if you imagine scaling fast charging with much more vehicles, it's going to have an intense draw and demands onto the utility company. And this photo shows what you need to do to actually install new infrastructure to be able to support the more capacity needed. right? You have to innovate and retrofit the dispensers, the power cabinets, the switch gears, the transformers, the wiring, and then batteries and inverters to be able to say, well, we want to install a fast charger. We have to do all this infrastructure work first. So the cost of installation for a level 3 system, a DCFC, can take up to 100K, 200K US dollars, and then multiple months of construction. So it's a very expensive, but very convenient way if you can actually install it. Of course, there's interesting innovations in that market as well. Freewire is an interesting company. What they do is they have the ability to connect to the grid at the normal power of 20 watts that you would have in the outlet, but they have a very interesting technology as well as batteries stored in their charging station to be able to charge their battery. And then for a user, you plug in and it does exactly what the DCFCs, the fast chargers, would do, except it doesn't have that much load onto the utility network. So the company's raised recently 125 million from BlackRock in a few months ago, and we're looking at them and try to evaluate the investment opportunity there. I also wanted to mention Ample, which is a different solution for the same type of problem, right? The question is, how can we do a very fast charge so that consumers as well as enterprise clients can go in, use 20 minutes or less to charge their vehicle, similar to what you would do at a gas station. So Ample is a company that I actually invested in back in 2017. They're a electric vehicle battery swapping company where instead of charging the vehicle with the same battery, you go into one of these locations and then it automatically uses robots to take your battery out and put in a different battery. It's a very interesting solution with very experienced founders. And they've raised about a year ago, 160 million from various investors to expand internationally. So there are very interesting aspects of level 3 charging that are trying to create very convenient solutions for the customer, and then that take advantage of some of the limitations within the market. So in summary, level 1 is very low cost per charge, is very cheap to develop, how is very slow and residential. Level 2 is a combination between residential and then public. You do have certain types of innovations that are needed, but it's the vast majority of the market. And then of course your DCFCs, level 3, they're fast, they're very convenient. However, they cost much per charge, as well as infrastructure demands are very important. And then when thinking about, I think, the electric vehicle charging market, you have to a lot of the other ideas and thoughts that we have are related to different use cases for people, right? I think there's different data around, I think 80% of all driving is within a 30-mile radius, for example, or that, people predict that there's going to be 90% of the charging going forward is going to be at home charging. You have various innovations that are needed in urban charging for low income, people, as well as different solutions that are being applied for large corporate buildings or various high rises for apartments. So there's a lot of different innovations that are happening on top of the existing public companies like EVgo, like ChargePoint, like Blink, et cetera. And with all the market tailwinds that are happening with new policy initiatives, we think it's an interesting area to potentially invest in. And we're doing more work to really understand it properly and finding the right solutions at the right valuation. So overall, I wanted to give everybody an overview of what we've been looking at and what we've been thinking about so that we can expand on the client thesis that we're developing here at MarketX.
Great. Thanks, Mike. I want to pause here for a little bit also to share a little bit why, we're excited about this specific industry and also the deals, how we're selecting them. So in the next few weeks, you will see that we will probably talk about 2 to 3 deals a week, given that we only have 45 minutes. So not a lot of time to cover many of the exciting deals. But today we're looking at companies all over the US, also Europe, Asia. Climate tech is going to take many countries by storm. Some of the businesses that started 11 years ago may not have been, well regarded because at the time, timing wasn't ready. But now some of these companies have developed years of, I would say, advantage by entering the market early. Now they're the ones becoming darlings of the venture capital world. So we have selected a few companies that we believe are, medium to long-term success stories, anywhere from 5 to 10x return. So of course, feel free to let us know if you have any questions, but, hopefully this was a helpful session. We wanted to leave this time to also see, which other companies you guys are interested in so that we can, reach out to more founders and invite them for our next few sessions. Please, let us know your feedback, and, you can always reach us on email, reach us over Telegram or WhatsApp. One of the ways that we're trying to stay in touch more with our clients is also, put up these videos on YouTube so you can see the sessions you have missed before. Before I go, Mike and Wissam, would you guys like to add on any more colors for this week's climate tech coverage?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall climate is something that I think many of us have been passionate about for many years. For us, the initial thinking is about where carbon starts, what are the industries that are most impacted or have the highest carbon footprint, and what are the various innovations that are happening. For me personally, I'm currently involved in a lot of early stage climate related accelerators, incubators, including generator sustainability, including Greentown Labs, hacks, et cetera. And I've been doing that for many years. So it's interesting that the market has momentum and it's kind of catching up to where we would all want it to catch up to. And then it's really about trying to find the right business models and the right technologies to make bets in at various levels and various stages that we think will help us as well as our future generations on planet Earth. So it's something I think that the whole team is very passionate about. And we're excited to present to you and share some of the ideas that we're coming up with.
Great. Thank you so much. We just have a comment here that says we're excited to learn more about the metaverse, its technology use cases. Definitely, we're excited about the metaverse as well. And we have previously invested in multiple deals in the metaverse. Most recently, we invested in a company called Spatial, which is building a virtual marketplace for art, for working spaces. It's actually a US-based company with a South Korean coverage. Their latest Series B is backed by Samsung Ventures. So we can definitely create a session focused on the metaverse. You have enough interest, feel free to shoot us a message and we will plan for the next few weeks. So next, we're going to talk about another company in the climate tech space, Span.io. Wissam, would you like to share your screen?
Great, thank you, Cathryn. So the next company we will cover is Span. We might want to have or need some context for it to understand first why we are really attracted by this company. We feel it's great opportunity and why it did catch our attention. So first, I think there is a few large trends in the EV space. So there is a EV cars adoption that leads eventually to more and more charging stations, whether public or in residential areas. We also had in the last years an increase in solar rooftop capacity. And all in all, you had some sort of a decrease in price of batteries and storage solution. Added to this, you had in the past, but also recently, government incentives and tax benefits. The Inflation Reduction Act is one of them. Kalam eventually mentioned it. But what we really like is that as cars go electric and heating and cooking move away from natural gas, we actually anticipate the amount of electricity flowing through homes to quadruple in the coming years. And that means that several billion breaker panels will need to be upgraded over the next 20 years. So when you think about this and you put in perspective the recent government incentives or new policies, take, for example, the 2022 California Energy Code, which for the region of California in the US sets the building standards for new construction, a new requirement for new single-family homes is for them to be built battery ready. So one company that actually solves that aspect is Span. And SPAN basically developed products to enable the rapid adoption of renewable energy and deliver an intuitive interface for the home, which means they actually started to smart electrical panel to actually upgrade an existing old legacy traditional panel. And we will see how that works. The company was founded, and that's another point that we quite like, by Arch Rao. He used to be the head of sales engineering and head of product design at Tesla before eventually launching SPAN in 2018. He holds a master in mechanical engineering from Stanford, and he leads a team of innovators at SPAN. Since founding the company, he raised approximately $130 million from world-class investors, including PropTech companies like Fifth Wall or PropTech as well, and a couple large investors such as Wells Fargo or Munich Re. We like the backing of this company, especially as they don't only provide capital, they're also strategic. Think Amazon, and I'll come to this later. What is so special with SPAN product? So as I said, it's a smart panel, but what really happens is that it replaces the existing panels at home and allow them to actually control individual circuits using your own mobile app. So it comes with a software and quite an easy to use application that can help you actually monitor the use, see how much electricity you're actually producing. If you have a solar roof, it also helps you basically monitor where you want to direct that energy and when to use the grid and when to use that energy you store and produce. The design is quite actually appealing as well, but beyond that, it really helps you move towards more electrification of your house. As I was saying, you have a big push from governments and policies, but you also want to basically have a more efficient house and energy around it, especially as you get into EV cars, which you want to also sometimes charge yourself at home. We really liked the product, not only for its design, as I was saying, but also due to all the partnerships they secured. So we quite like the strategy, which we find quite sound from the management. Take, for example, in February 2020, SPAN and LG Chem launched battery storage and intelligent home energy control system. And that basically enabled them to, as I was saying earlier, customize the backup power. Think about a power outage that could happen in some regions more frequently than others. Their highly reliable system now is kind of the solution for those households that face this risk more often than others. In 2021, and that's massive innovation, and that's why it kind of resonated a lot for us in what we feel with the EV adoption is a massive win, is that EV charger they launched and roll out with Sunrun, the leading US residential solar. That charger is designed to operate as an integral part of a home's electricity system. So when you think about it, it actually dilutes the cost of that panel because you can actually have it alongside with that charger. So say you wanted to get that electric car, instead of having to rely on a very low level 1 charger, which would take you so long to charge your car, probably about 30 hours to fully charge it, you can actually upgrade your installation with the SPAN panel and actually get that extra power and charge your car in a much lower period of time. In 2021, in their Series A round, the company has been successful in securing Amazon Alexa funding. What that means is they, of course, got capital, but what was very interesting for us is to see the direction it's taking. Beyond just electrifying the house, it's a tool that, combined with Alexa as Amazon, is allowing customers to monitor their house and the device that's used for managing the use and the production and eventually optimize the flow of energy within the house just by the voice, basically. So we quite like that innovation as well. It shows where the industry is also moving and how SPAN is integrating into this whole ecosystem. And ultimately, beyond those key large players partnerships, They got partnerships with Hawaii's Revolution, Good Faith Energy, Sunation, and Telsela or Solar Edge, which are also validation of their product. When it comes to SPAN product, I feel it's quite important to mention why we feel, despite the cost of it, is quite an interesting product, and the whole company and the whole story around it is quite strong and competitive. They have a robust hardware, which beyond the design is also very efficient. They have an intuitive software, which is kind of easy to use, but also provides all tools and insights for you to understand your use, and also to learn more about what should be done for you to be more efficient. The company ultimately has had and received a few awards, one of them being one of the world's most innovative companies, according to Fast Company this year. But beyond that, it's really the products themselves that got some awards. Best home technology product for the panel, but also the best energy efficient product at the Best of IBS Awards this year. So there are kind of a lot of things to say about the company. But we've been quite amazed by the founders' leadership and the progress they've made across product, sales, and strategic partnerships. We believe they can become a leader in electrification and ultimately enable homes to be a core part of decentralized grid. We like the product because it increases electricity usage without upgrading the service, because they're managing loads at the service point. And we also like the fact that it combines the hardware and the software, and that software is, I mean, we chat with the CEO and we like the vision he has on developing that software and bringing even more tools around it to allow the company's platform to communicate with downstream appliances within homes without in a seamless. So that's for SPAN. If you have any question or want to learn more, please don't hesitate.
Okay, great. And then a few announcements. So first of all, we're having a Zurich meetup this week. I'm actually personally in Zug, Switzerland right now. Next week, we're having London happy hour, Thursday, Mayfair, Mercato. So if you are around London, please give us a shout out, and love to have you joining us between 6 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at Mercato. It's a quite interesting church looking place. So, look forward to seeing many of you around the world. And then lastly, before we go, we would like to remind everyone on our platform here today, you can see our latest deals, probably from Shipper, Indonesian e-commerce logistics, to Enderel, Palmer Lucky's defense company, to Rimac, Croatia, Bugatti brand, which was merged earlier this year, and now they're creating the world's fastest EV car. We're also launching a small Neuralink deal this week, 0 at $45 per share. So please reach out if you're interested. As we launch more and more deals on a weekly basis, we're also trying to gather more feedback from our clients, which ones would be the most exciting. So please stay tuned, and we'll see you next week. Sorry, the week after Tuesday. We do this bi-monthly. So thanks everyone for participating today, and have a great day ahead.